afternoon, everyone. My name is Kelly Smith. I am the training coordinator for Kentucky SPIN, or Kentucky Special Parent Involvement Network. I'm here today to talk to you about self-directed IEP meetings, and I have on the line with me Stella Beard, the Assistant Director for Kentucky SPIN. I will stop periodically and ask if there's any questions. Stella will check that, and we'll address those, and then there will also be time at the end to do that. So again, I thank you for joining us. We absolutely do not take it lightly. We know that there are probably a million things that you could be doing right now, so we really appreciate you spending this time with us. So as we get started, I'm going to go ahead and tell everyone just a little bit about Kentucky SPIN, just in case we have any new people on today. Kentucky SPIN, like I said, is Kentucky Special Parent Involvement Network. Kentucky SPIN provides statewide training, information, and support to people with all types of disabilities, their parents and families, and professionals for all age groups. We do not act as attorneys, we don't represent families, and we do not give legal advice. We do empower families to effectively advocate for their children and provide peer support to help families access needed information and resources. Kentucky SPIN is the statewide Parent Training and Information Center, or PTI. We are funded by the U.S. Department of Education, and we've had that role in the state since 1988. So our agenda for this afternoon is what is an IEP, how to prepare for the meeting, how to participate in the meeting, and then some things to remember. Okay, so just a quick question before I dive in. Can I get you guys to enter into the chat box or the questions box whether or not you're joining this webinar as a parent, a professional, a student, what is the role that you're playing right now, just so I can kind of gauge who we're talking to today. I'm going to give you just a couple of minutes to do that.
Kelly, I see a wide variety of people commenting. We've had professionals, we have parents, foster parents. I see voc rehab professionals and counselors.
Well, wonderful. So we're kind of all over the place today, which is great. I love having mixed audiences because I think everyone has valuable input from all their different perspectives.
That's right. I want to let everyone know, too, that the PowerPoint and a couple of handouts are also available for them to download under the Handouts tab. But if you don't see it and you're not able to do that right now, we will be following up in about 4 hours after the webinar. That'll include all of the handouts and also the PowerPoint.
Absolutely. And there's going to be, not that you need to look at it, but I will briefly just kind of introduce you to one of those handouts here in just a little bit. Okay, so what is an IEP and why do I need one? I have worked with a lot of students and they don't know or necessarily understand what their IEP is, what it's for, much less that they have the power to speak up at those meetings and that they should speak up at those meetings. And then once they learn that, they have a hard time communicating what they'd like to say or, knowing what to say. So we designed this workshop with them in mind to kind of explain what an IEP is and how to interact in their IEP meeting. So an IEP is an individualized education program. IDEA, which is Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, requires any student that needs specially designed instruction and related services to have an IEP. An IEP helps meet your needs as a student and states what your education program is going to be for up to 1 year. So I encourage kids to really just step back and think about, what they want to do with their life and kind of view the IEP as their roadmap. So think of your IEP as a roadmap to your future. Your IEP is going to inform your team where you are now, your goals for the upcoming year, and what steps it will take to get there. And since this is going to be your road as the student, you need to learn how to navigate it. So your IEP is a roadmap to future and current classes, skills, needs, your career, and a whole lot more. And so you may be asking yourself, why do I need to be involved in my IEP? It's the law. It's absolutely your choice whether or not to attend and take part in the IEP meeting, but it is a meeting about you, so why wouldn't you want to tell the rest of the team what you think and want? You know what works for you, and you know what doesn't work for you, and you know your dreams and desires for your future better than anyone else. So summing that up, you need to be involved because, number one, it's the law. Number two, it's all about you. Number three, you know what works for you. Number four, you know what doesn't work for you. And number five, you know your dreams. So let's talk about your team. I've mentioned your team a couple of times. So who is your team anyway? Your team includes you, first and foremost. It's all about you, so you really should consider using your voice on this team. IDEA, and remember, IDEA stands for Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, states that students must be invited to take part in these meetings if appropriate. The same goes for your parents, guardians, or an educational advocate. There must also be a district representative, someone that is qualified to interpret evaluation results, your special education teacher, a regular education teacher, and that you can have anyone else that you would like to invite that is connected to your current and future educational and independent living needs. This can be a therapist, a guidance counselor, or even a friend. So again, your team is you, your parent, guardian, or educational advocate, a district representative, someone to interpret results, a special education teacher, a regular education teacher, and anyone else that is connected to your current and educational or independent living needs. So what else do you need to know about that meeting? In Kentucky, the IEP meeting can also be called the ARC meeting or ARC meeting, which also means Admissions and Release Committee. The team or committee meets at least once a year to review the current IEP and write a new IEP. This usually takes about an hour, give or take, but can take as long as it needs. The meeting will be held at a mutually agreed upon time and place. This usually happens at the school, in a conference room, a classroom, or in an office. You'll need to be prepared to participate in this meeting, which we'll discuss in the remainder of this presentation. And finally, remember that knowledge empowers you. So keep in mind, it can also be called an ARC or an ARC meeting. You're going to meet at least once a year, usually lasts an hour or so. It's going to take place in a conference room, a classroom, or maybe in an office. and that you need to come prepared. So getting started, learning to self-direct your IEP meeting. Now that you're more familiar with what the IEP is and what the IEP or ARC meeting is, let's talk about how you can learn to self-direct this meeting. What does self-directed mean? A self-directed IEP and IEP meeting means that the student not only attends the meeting, but he or she is also involved in the plans and goal writing of the IEP document. Don't worry, you won't have to actually write the IEP, but you will be involved in the decisions, plans, and goal setting. So does anybody, before we get deep into this, does anybody have any questions right now or any comments?
I don't see any questions right now. Kelly, everything looks good.
All right. Okay, so there are a few things you really need to know about yourself and some things that you will need to do before attending this meeting. First, you will need to start preparing at least 3 months in advance. I know this may seem like a long time, but it's going to go by really quick. Next, you need to develop a destination, meaning you'll want to decide where you want to be in your future. What career do you want to have? What would you like to learn in the upcoming school years? What kinds of classes should you take to assist you? And what do you need to master in order to have success? Once you have done these things, ask a teacher, counselor, or your case manager to go through your current IEP with you and explain what each section means. And I know if you need some one-on-one assistance with that, Kentucky SPIN staff is happy to help with that, explaining what each section means, breaking that down to you as a student, a professional, or a parent, and really helping them really get into the bones of that document. So, but for time's sake, we won't be doing that in this presentation today. So, again, start about 3 months in advance, develop a destination, make a list of classes that you're interested in taking, not necessarily what may be easy or just make time pass quickly. And then read and really get to know your current IEP inside and out. Okay, so we're going to fast forward just a little bit and pretend like you've already read that IEP and that you already know it inside and out. So now that you've done that, you understand what each section is for. Now you're going to need to ask yourself and be able to answer the following questions. What is your disability? How does your disability affect your life? How does it affect your education? What is your learning style? What accommodations do you currently receive in school? And what services do you receive in school? So services and accommodations are different, and you need to know and understand the difference between the two. The answers to some of these questions, some of the needs, and some of your plans will become your IEP goals. You should talk to your family, your school counselor, teachers, your case manager about your plans and what they think you need to achieve your goals. And one of your handouts is a student's guide to the IEP. It is a phenomenal document for professionals and parents to use along with their students to really get to know, get more in depth what the IEP is and how to use it. So the next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to think about what the past year. So remember I told you that the IEP is written yearly. What is the good and bad of the last year, of the last school year? So think about what worked for you in the past school year. Think about what didn't work for you. Do the supports that you currently receive work for you? Maybe you have supports in place that you don't really need, or maybe there's supports that you need that you don't have. Or maybe you need help in an area and you don't really know what that looks like. You need to be thinking about these things and talking about them. So what do you need to achieve your goals? And what types of supports do you need that you don't currently receive? And then who should you invite to the meeting? So once you've answered those questions, let's pretend like it's about 2 weeks before the meeting. You're going to want to discuss with your teacher or caseworker when your meeting is going to be. Decide who you think should be invited and send invitations. Prepare and practice what you would like to say at the meeting. If you have a communication disorder or speaking in front of people makes you overly anxious, you may want to consider using a PowerPoint presentation instead. However you choose to present is not the focus. The focus here is that you participate and make your voice heard. Just keep in mind, the IEP is all about you. It's all about your life. So definitely use your voice to say, this is what I like. This is what I don't like. This is, what I want to do with my life. This is the help that I need. This is the help I don't need. Really use your voice. Okay, before we get started with the meeting, does anybody have any questions? Or any comments? Anything they'd like to share?
I just want to remind everyone, if you do have a question, you can type it in the same box that Kelly asked you to type if you're a parent or professional or any of that, you can type that in the same box, and I'll be monitoring that and can let Kelly know. But right now, Kelly, you're good to go.
All right. Okay, so once you get to the meeting, you're going to want to put it in a place where you can see everyone at the table or in the room. You're going to want to use eye contact if at all possible. I realize that eye contact makes some people uncomfortable. So if you're comfortable using eye contact, do that. You're going to want to speak clearly, and you're going to want to speak in an appropriate tone. Nobody wants to hear you screaming at them, and you want to make sure that they can hear you and understand what you're saying. So you don't want to mumble or talk really low. You want to speak up. You want to use an appropriate tone and speak very clearly. You'll want to state your name and then introduce each member of the team or ask them to introduce themselves. And then, because there's going to be a lot of different people at that table and a lot of different people at that meeting, and keep in mind, they're professionals, they went to college, they've got a degree, and this is what they chose to do with their life, so they've gotten educated. They've done the work to know what to do, but you need to ask them to use a student-friendly language so that you can understand what they're talking about. And the same goes for parents. Ask for the professionals at the table to use a student-friendly language. And professionals, use the student-friendly language so your student and your parents know what you're talking about. Keep in mind that not everyone has a degree in education or, as a speech pathologist or whatever the case may be. And so use terms that they can understand. And then you inform the team by explaining your disability and how it affects your life and education. Talk to them about the strengths you have in class. Maybe you're really, really organized. Or maybe, your strength may be your humor. There are lots of different things that can be viewed as strengths, and if you have a hard time finding out what your strengths are, ask the people that are close to you. Ask your friends, ask your family, ask your teachers. I promise you they know and they see them. But it's important for you to communicate your strengths in classes while you're at this meeting. Discuss accommodations that you receive and why you receive those accommodations. It's one thing to know, why you may have something, but it's another thing to know that you have it and why you have it. So it's important to know both. Talk to them about your goals for the next year. So remember, you're going to have this meeting every year, at least once a year, and talk to them about what you want to do for the next year. And then if you're age 14 or 8th grade or higher, at age 14 or 8th grade, whichever comes first, you're going to want to start to talk about your transition plans. Now, the law requires the school to start talking about your transition plans in your IEP meeting, but at 14 years old or 8th grade, whichever comes first, it's really, really important for you to start thinking about what you want to do when you get out of high school. Do you want to go to college? What kind of job do you want to do? Do you need to go to school for that? So different things like that. And then you'll ask for suggestions and comments about your IEP content. So remember, when you go into this meeting, most of the time you already have an IEP. This may be a first meeting, but chances are you've probably already got one. And ask for suggestions and comments about the one that you already have. Listen to those suggestions and comments. If there's something you don't understand or something that you disagree with, ask the person who's making that statement to clarify or explain to you why they feel the way they do. Share your honest feelings about goals and objectives. Don't just go along. Remember, the IEP is not something that they're doing to you or for you. This is something that school is doing with you. And have someone write down everything that's been decided. Make sure that it's written in a language to where if you pick it up, you can read it and understand what it's saying. So but always make sure that somebody's taking notes on your behalf. And then don't forget to ask for an explanation if you don't understand something. If there isn't enough time to finish in the time that's been allotted or scheduled for this meeting, schedule your next meeting date before you leave that meeting. Ask for a copy or a copy of the draft of the current IEP. And then you're going to want to thank everyone for attending. So like I said, you're not actually writing the IEP, but your input, your thoughts, your goals go into every single piece of it. And then it's important to remember these two main things. Or a few main things. It says two, but there's three. Services are determined by the committee, not by any individual member. So that's very, very important to remember. Services are determined by the committee, by the whole team, not by one person. And then you're going to have to work hard to accomplish your goals. That's with anything, not just your IEP, but especially your IEP. It's going to take you working hard to accomplish those. And then if you meet your goals early, you may need new goals, or you may need help with a subject. So ask for help to schedule another meeting if you feel like you need one. If you meet your goals and you want to add new goals, that's fine. You can have another meeting and you can change those goals. So but all you need to do is reach out to either your special ed teacher or your case manager to get that meeting scheduled. Then we have our resources, and then, like I said, we have a few handouts that you can print or will be emailed to you in a few hours. Those are excellent resources that were handpicked to really help students understand and use their IEP to their advantage. Like I said, I mean, with a lot of students who really don't understand, what the IEP is, or how, what it's for, or how to use it, or much less that they have a voice. So it's very, very important for these students to learn to speak up, learn to advocate for themselves. This is the best place for them to start to practice self-advocacy. And I'm going to ask one more time before we go, and I realize that we're getting out way early. But if you all don't have any questions, if you do, just go ahead and type those in the chat box. And then we'll address them before we dismiss. There will be an evaluation that pops up at the end. If you could, please fill that out. If for some reason you missed that, there will be a link to it in the email as well. But please fill out that evaluation as honestly as possible. We really take it to heart and use that to make our presentations better and to also learn what you want to hear about or how we can better serve you. So does anyone have any questions or comments right now?
Kelly, what if a student, doesn't really want to participate? What are some ways that parents or teachers can encourage their involvement in that IEP meeting?
Well, I guess when the best advice I can say, is just really tell them that this is their opportunity to speak up for themselves, to really say, this is what I want, this is what I don't want. They lots of times just feel like, even if they go to the meeting, they feel like, I don't even know what you're saying, so just whatever. They agree to whatever, even though they don't really know what they're agreeing to. And so it makes lots of kids not want to participate. It makes kids not really care. They just go and they sit there and they, pat their pencil on the table or, play with it or, it is very, very important that they understand that this is their time to use their voice. Again, they don't have to speak up in the meeting. I have a 23-year-old son with a traumatic brain injury. He would never have spoken up in a meeting, ever. But what we could have done, we didn't, but what we could have done was we could have presented a PowerPoint presentation. We could have made a short video. There are lots of different ways that kids can get creative. They can, kind of draw a path, if anyone's familiar what a path looks like. We also have, some different trainings on mapping dreams and different things like that for students that can really help them learn how to, learn what they need to know. But there's lots of different ways they can participate without actually having to sit down and run the meeting, so to speak. The important thing, again, like I said in the presentation, is that they get involved. Does that kind of answer the question?
Yes. I think that's a great way to put it, and just expressing with them that the importance of the involvement. I think a lot of times as parents, and Kelly, we're both parents of young adults now with disabilities, and one of the things that I found is that when we do everything for them and answer for them and plan their future for them, we are creating that learned helplessness, which means they begin to depend on us way too much. And so this is the first step, as you said, to self-advocacy and self-determination, which allows them to start taking an active role in determining what their future is going to look like after high school.
Absolutely, and it's really, really hard if you don't have a child with special needs when they get to be, in their early 20s or whatever, and you've had to, because when they get out of school, the parent is going to kind of take on the case manager role, and that's hard. That's a very, very hard role. So, especially if you have kind of trained them to be totally dependent on you, which unfortunately was my biggest mistake, or one of my biggest mistakes. I have lots of biggest mistakes, but so one of my biggest mistakes was really just training my son to be so reliant on me rather than being independent and really using his voice. He does have some executive functioning issues, so he does need support. But he has been totally fine his whole life with me just making decisions for him because he trusts me. He knows I love him and want the best for him, and he really trusts me. And, of course, I would never do anything, intentionally wrong. But the one thing I didn't do was really encourage him to speak up and use his voice. And so then what happened is he gets out of high school, and we were one of those families that thought he had all kinds of time. Well, he didn't. It goes by really super fast. We weren't prepared, and transition out of high school has been really, really hard. Teaching him how to disclose his disability and when he, what to disclose and when to disclose it. Things like that have been really, really difficult. Very, very hard for him. So if a child will start in these meetings learning how to disclose their disability, learning more about their disability, how it affects them, it's going to do nothing but help them in the long run. We, I'm sure, have all done things where we put it off and we put it off and we put it off, and then we're scrambling to catch up at the end. Our kids are no different. So allowing them the opportunity, the platform, and encouraging them to use that platform to advocate for themselves, know their disability, know how it affects them, know the supports they currently have, the supports that they may need, what's available to them, and how to access it is the absolute best thing that we can do for our kids. Do you have any other questions or comments?
I totally agree. That was great. No, I think that's all. I don't see anything else. What a great webinar today. Thanks, Kelly, so much. And like she said, if you all would complete the evaluation at the end of the webinar, we would really appreciate it. Anything else, Kelly?
Nope, that's it. You guys have a great day.
Okay, thanks. Y'all too. Bye-bye.